My name is Ben Glover, and this is my entry plan for the Greenwood High School, Middle School. I'm originally from Washington State. I grew up on a dairy farm. I then went to Seattle Pacific University intending to study elementary education. Thought it was the best school in the state for that, but got distracted by a young lady and ended up doing economics and business administration instead, which I loved and I did well in. But after working out of college for Xerox for about a year, I'm like, this is not what I like. This is not what I'm doing. What am I doing with my life? I got my midlife crisis out of the way at 23. And what is it I wanted to do? And I figured out, I originally went there because I wanted to work with kids. And so went and worked with kids for a while, taught preschool to make sure that's what I wanted. And got lucky and had a friend of mine who a friend of his was trying to open a juvenile treatment center in a little place called Bethel, Alaska. And he thought of me and connected me with the job. Interviewed, and for the first but not last time in my life, I got on a plane to go do a job in a town I'd never been to, in a state I'd never been to. And so seems to be a theme, because I did it when I went to Barrow and became the Dean of Vocational Education and Workforce Development for Ely Savitt College, and I do believe this is my first time walking into this building. So, yeah. Yes, I seem to have a problem. Anyway, had a wonderful time. Wonderful time in Alaska. I've lived there for 12 years and gotten to do things that I would have never gotten to do otherwise. I have a few of them up on the board. Had whale cooked any number of ways. Sat next to a polar bear on a plane. I will say that it was a baby polar bear, and the polar bear was in a cage. It's not like he was, had bought seat 6C. Of course, there was no seat 6C. This was an 8-seater, so, survived for 81 years, it seemed like it, 81 days of darkness. But let me tell you, here's the secret. Everybody tells you, I can handle it. Boy, all that dark, that would get to me. I would go crazy. It's actually not the dark. When it's dark, turn on a light. Not the first year it got dark. There are street lights every 20 feet. Okay? You can turn on a light. It's very difficult to turn on darkness. When you have a 5-year-old that points to that window and says, it's light. It's not bedtime, it's light. And you point to the clock and it's 9:30 and it's time for them to go to bed, and they're pointing, hey, I want to go out and play. Look, it's light out there. It's a difficult argument. Believe it or not, you end up putting aluminum foil on your windows. It actually reflects the light out better than anything. So you will go through a lot of aluminum foil up there. Often just taping it for months at a time onto windows that we don't really need to open for any reason. So, because it's just insane trying to sleep when it's that much light. So, another fun story. I did appear for 11 seconds of Big Miracle with Drew Barrymore. In fact, if you go watch the trailer, I'm in the trailer. Now, let me tell you, that was the coldest day of my life. Oh, sure, it was only negative 15. And I've been negative 56. But when in the Arctic, you go from the car to the office, from the house to the car. You don't linger in between. You don't stand around. Well, if you've ever been part of a movie making, standing around is a big part of it, because they want you right where they need you, so that 33 seconds, they can have you walk where you need to walk. But otherwise, you just stand there and stand there. And it is so cold when you're just standing there, even though it was negative 15. Oh my gosh. Father of 11, 5 of which are school age, 5 of which I've adopted. So you can kind of see all of them there up in the picture. 2 of them are Inupiaq Eskimo, and 2 of them are Yupik Eskimo. Okay. So a little bit of an introduction to me career-wise. What do I do well? What's my specialty? I think my specialty is being able to start new things in organizations. When I was named the Dean of Vocational Education and Workforce Development, I was the first one. And though that program had existed in pieces in other departments, if you added up their numbers, it was 300 students served a year. By the time, 4 years later, when I was done being dean, we were over 2,000. We were almost to 2,200, actually. I brought dual credit classes to the smaller communities in Alaska for the first time. There had always been sort of a hub and spoke system where you had to go in to get the dual credit classes, especially in terms of vocational ones. And so we actually brought them on site in the villages that had never had it. That had never happened before. We got all sorts of calls like, hey, how you guys doing this? Is it working? Because we pioneered it. As a principal, I implemented a Montessori program. I have implemented project-based learning. At my current school, we implemented a place-based philosophy. Super successful. We had a chronic absenteeism of over 62%, which has been reduced by over half, and student discipline has gone down by over half. And we think it's because, we tried to make our school reflect the community we were serving and the priorities of the community that we were serving. We went on the first field trip in Alaska. Pandemic, you can't go do field trips, right? Well, we were doing subsistence-based field trips, going and gathering food. And so we were able to go out in that first week. So, and I'd like to think that I have some knowledge and experience with curriculum, both at the K-12 and secondary school level. I've authored over 20 classes. Some of those have been short-term classes, but some of those have been semester-long classes. Okay, so if hired, what can you expect from me? Honesty. I will, if anything, get myself in trouble from time to time. It's not that I'm blunt. I'd like to think my tact is pretty good. But if I made a mistake, I will say so. And I will come to you and tell you. And I may have been able to get away with it, but that would go against what I think is right. Okay. I love humor. Love humor. I love trying to sneak a joke in. I love dad jokes, and nothing hits 100% of the time. I'd say about 60. I'd say about 60% that anybody other than me thinks is funny. But really, mostly I'm here to amuse myself, so it's all good with me. You will get unbridled enthusiasm from me. Whatever I'm doing and whatever I'm in all the way. I think that kind of shows up in terms of like, hey, I just show up places that I've never been, and I go try to get you to hire me. And it generally works. So but it's because when I want to be there, I really want to be there. That's just me. I am willing to take risks. I'm willing, as I said, to get on a plane and move to a little tiny town in Alaska at 24 years old, never been there. And then I'm willing to do it again. I am, willing to be wrong. I have failed in things. And it wasn't because I was, too worried. We all worry about certain things, but I'm willing to be wrong. But what that also means is if you have a better idea, your plan is better, I will abandon my plan and we will do your plan. I'm not the person who will have us doing the same wrong thing for 3 years in a row when it was clearly wrong the first year we did it. I'm willing to say, hey, my bad. My ego is not harmed by taking a chance and then the chance not paying off. Call me a bad father, my ego's hurt, but not by being wrong. And I'm someone who seeks and input widely and values it. I'm still talking and still getting help from people from, decades back in my life because I still seek their input. I believe everybody has something interesting to say, and that if I can get the widest variety of types of input, that is helpful. Okay. In terms of what kind of leader am I believe in servant leadership. The person who kind of thought up servant leadership was a guy named Robert Greenleaf. I serve because I am the leader, and I'm the leader because I serve. So how does that apply to a school? Well, I believe it's my job as a principal to ensure that my teachers have all the tools and support they need to be the best educators they can be. So, okay, what does that mean? Why? And why on that? Well, because I, as a principal, would be usually one step removed, maybe in a student discipline situation, but otherwise one step removed from the students. And so I need to make sure that those people who are directly working with the students have everything they need to be successful. That's my job. I believe it's my job to keep students safe, that keep this as a productive place to learn, and that they have every opportunity the students have every opportunity to be successful in and out of the classroom. I believe it's my job to ensure that my classified staff have predictable, meaningful work, and that they have a clear path for career advancement within the district. Okay, maybe that means that they want to become a teacher. I would like to help that happen. Maybe it just means that they want to learn more on how to be successful within their field. Again, my job to try to make that happen. It's also my job as a principal to be responsive to parents, families, and other members. Okay, we're not going to go through my step-by-step plans because we don't want to be here for 2 hours, but I gave them to you before we did. If you look in there, one of the things that's in that activity sheet there is a commitment to call parents back within 24 hours, to email back within 24 hours to parents, to staff, to everyone, that it matters that you get back to people in a timely fashion. It shows respect, and respect is so important. It's my job as principal to be an active and engaged member of the administrative team, to give advice when asked, and to be part of those conversations, and to just be genuinely helpful. Right? The next sentence I'm about to read is something that I believe is the most important sentence in this whole thing. I believe that the school is the primary partner in helping parents and families educate their children. School exists to serve their community, and consequently, each school should look, act, and feel like the communities they serve. So, I'm in Tetland, and I have no intention, if you hire me, of bringing exactly what I brought to Tetland here, because that would not reflect. Tetland's very different. Right? 23% free and reduced rate, 97%. 97% Caucasian, 0%. Just different, okay? And that, but also that the place where schools get in trouble, where people is when they start to either take too low or too high of a row. Too low meaning, these parents, they're not supporting their kids, they're not doing their parent job right, so, why should we even try? Okay, then that's not providing enough support to being that primary partner. You are that primary partner. Too much that you start to infringe on decisions that really should come from the parent about the kids, where they're going, what they're doing, and trying to become that parent. That's a mistake. Okay? We're here to help educate, to be the primary partner in educating, and to do everything we can, but we're never to try to replace the parent. Okay? Every student deserves an administrator that is thinking about that child's post-secondary education, whether it's a university or vocational school, or even, what kind of job they want to get into the day they enter high school. Okay? In the treatment world, we would call it aftercare. Okay? Stephen Covey would call it beginning with the end in mind. It's the idea that you think about what that child needs by the time they finish 8th grade, the day they get into middle school. You think about what classes, what opportunities, what supports that child's going to need to achieve what they want when they graduate, the day they enter high school. Okay? You think about it the day they come in. You're already planning, you're already putting everything in place. Okay, so one of the things that you asked for often is your philosophy of education. And though I've written that a number of times, it always feels a little hollow. What's a philosophy? It's a way of thinking about education. Not as important, I think, is what my principles are. How am I going to make my decisions? I want you to know how I'm going to make my decisions in terms of how things should happen. Where are my advice? Where are my thoughts going to come from? And then these are them. It's a longer list, but I believe you reward collectively and consequence individually. When you reward collectively, it builds positive peer pressure because we're all trying to achieve the same award, the same reward, the same incentive, whatever you want to call it. It helps me to help you, and it helps you to help me. Okay? There becomes a virtuous cycle of us supporting each other and helping each other that builds and builds and gets stronger and stronger from my experience. Okay? And alternatively, you want a consequence individually because we all hate getting blamed for something someone else did. Okay? You always begin with the end in mind. I talked about it in terms of that, that aftercare, that when students are coming in, but whatever it is you're doing in life, where do you want to end up? Backwards planning. What do you need to do to be able to get there? Okay? This is something that comes out of economics. I believe everyone acts in what they perceive as their own best interest. Okay? And what does that mean? You'll see a kid doing something that makes no sense, or a horrible behavior, or just throwing. They think they're getting something from it. Okay? They may be wrong, but they think that it's working for them somehow. It may get them attention. It may get them some sort of, some people will unfortunately bribe kids. It gets them something, or it might be getting them out of something. Maybe they hate math, and so they'll do it just to get out of math. Okay? In the treatment world, we would run what's called a functional behavior analysis. What is that student getting out of that behavior? Because it's never nothing. Okay? Or at least they don't perceive it to be nothing. So if you don't understand why somebody's doing something, it's probably because you don't understand that person or that situation well enough, and there's a mystery. One of the things I constantly am walking around looking for is that piece of information I'm missing. I'll see somebody doing something that doesn't make sense, and I'll know I'm missing a piece of information. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. Okay? Within the classroom, I believe in hands-on lessons. I believe in teaching clearly relevant skills. Okay? That kinesthetic, that tactile. Okay? Students learn when they can look, touch, and feel what they're doing. I believe you have to take an intentional approach to prior knowledge. You have to intentionally interact with it. You can't just bring it up sometime in the lesson. You got to start with it. You got to prime students to already be thinking about that. I think it's brain research show it works. If I tell you that we're going to learn about fractions today, your brain, without you even knowing, it's accessing what it knows about fractions. And that would be a really weak version of it. But I don't want to teach a lesson here today. All right. The next three go together. Task analysis by students, that's the ability to explain why they're doing what they're doing. Reciprocal teaching, that's the ability to teach someone else. And summarization, that's the ability to articulate what you learned. They all point towards the same thing, which is if a student cannot express what they've learned, if they can't articulate it, they haven't really learned it. So you want to make sure that students can, and what I want to see is a principle when I'm working with teachers, is that students can articulate either verbally, in writing, whatever, what they have learned, one way or the other. I mean, writing's preferred method, of course, but it's not always appropriate for every lesson. Right? And last but not least, I am a firm believer that in an active classroom with extensive participation that addresses the social needs of the child is a functional classroom. Right. Now, why Greenwood? Okay. What am I doing here? Well, I believe that this is not a school that needs to be fixed. This is an amazing school. I hope that I'm blessed with the opportunity of joining you and being able to work with you all, and being able to be your principal. But I do not see this as something that I need to come in and fix. This is something where I hope that I get to join what you're doing, be a leader within it, and help enhance what you're doing, but not fix. You guys are awesome. You guys are a blue ribbon school, an exemplary high performance school. One thing, the one rating online had you as the 47th best school in all of Pennsylvania, top 5%, and in the last year where results are available, you exceeded proficiency goals in every area and growth goals in everywhere except science. This is a school when I come in, I'm going to do a lot of listening and learning first off, because you guys are already killing it, and I just hope to make a few things and to improve a few things and to help be a part of what is something that is already awesome. Okay. One of the things you do particularly well that I wanted to highlight that really attracted me to who you are and to be wanted to be a part of what you're doing is the way that you celebrate success. I think that the way you put that up on your Facebook and hey, look at our students is good and wonderful. And I think it changes the conversation. So often in education, we end up talking about the negative way too much. You know, what's wrong with these kids? What's wrong with these schools? And what you're doing on Facebook and highlighting your students' successes, you know, showing the amazing things they're doing, it reframes that. And that's something that very much aligns with my values and is something that I would love to be a part of. Okay, now in doing this, your superintendent asked me to address 5 specific issues. And now this is the kind of the part where I go through those. Right? The first one of these 5 things is school culture. Right? I think an administrator must visibly value all opinions. And the key word there is visibly. Okay? It's not enough to just, you know, value them. And if you look carefully, you can see how that principal really listened to that person. No, you must need to make a visible effort. It needs to be very intentional. Teachers and staff must know, that it's acceptable to privately disagree with the administrator. And the administrator nearly always wants the opinions of the teachers, the staff, and the students. That must be clear. You know, if it's something super racist, then that would be why the nearly's in there. But, you know, short of that. The administrator must make active efforts to make themselves visible and approachable. You know, that your door should be open if you can. You need to be out in school. And, you know, one of the things that you're going to see when you read through what I handed you in terms of how I'd like to have things play out is starting something called a pizza with the principal, maybe every other Tuesday or something of the similar, where it's just an open forum. Anyone, teacher, staff, parent, student can just come and talk. And having that visible effort to meet and greet and to get to know and to hear concerns, I think is very important. I believe getting it right is always more important than being right. And that gets back to that same thing I was talking about before, being willing to be wrong. I think that's important for school culture, that you're more concerned about whether that what you as an institution are doing than whose idea it was. Okay? And that last, bravery must be encouraged and when possible recognized. Change is hard and change is scary. So when somebody is willing to do so, when somebody's willing to be a leader in improving something and taking that chance, that needs to be recognized, encouraged, you know, like what you're doing with the students in terms of celebrating the success. Bravery is something that needs to be recognized and celebrated. And when an administrator does all these things, you know, the administrator really gets to kind of set the tone for the culture, and doing all these things frees everybody else up to willing to be wrong, to being brave, and to be willing to work together. That's my experience. Relationships matter. Successful working relationships do not happen by accident. Okay? It's very important that the administrator sees employees as whole people who cannot be successful at work if things are dramatically unsettled at home. If someone needs time off, give them the time off. If they need to be able to deal with things outside of work in order to be able to focus on work, that you need to try to give your employees the room to be able to do that. You know, and an administrator must be humble. There may be 1 or 2 things that I'm an expert at, but I'm not an expert at everything. You know your students, your school, your district, and your community better than I do. And so when the administrator is willing to be humble, it relaxes everybody else, because it becomes not something where, you know, people are afraid to admit what they don't know. So now some specific thoughts on dual enrollment. And why dual enrollment? Well, I think that, and why, first of all, you know, I want to reflect back that I've been on both sides. I mentioned having been the Dean of Vocational Education and having been the first one to be sending vocational classes on site in Alaska. So I've been the college administrator who is over those dual credit classes. But I've also been the high school teacher, or principal rather now, for the last 3 years supporting those dual credit classes. So I've seen both sides, and there's a few thoughts I have on it. Why does it matter? Obviously, it prepares students for college material. Saves students and families money. They don't have to take those credits. They don't have to pay for those credits because we are already doing so within the context of the school. And super importantly, it broadens the offering of the school. We are a school of only of a certain size, but when we're able to link in with the resources and abilities of a Lackawanna College or Harrisburg College, it expands what we're able to do. Again, I'm referring to the sheet you have in your hand there. You're going to see it reference a number of interactions that I intend to have with those institutions. And I want to get to know their programs as well as they do, and so that I can help support that. So I also want to talk about what I've seen hold students back. When dual credit doesn't work, why? Because I want to run a school that these things don't happen. So the first thing you can do to make sure that the negative things don't happen is be aware and be prepared. Okay, I've seen students fail in dual credit classes because of a lack of academic support or non-structured support. And what that means is, when you take, pre-algebra in 8th grade, you know who your teacher is. In middle school, you know your teachers. You go and you see your teacher if there's a problem. But when your teacher's off-site because it's a dual credit class, who do you see then? Is there somebody within the school? There should be. There needs to be someone within the school who is there to support those classes that those students know they can go ask for help with. That clarity helps make children successful. I've seen students who are not prepared for those college levels expectations, and they don't have someone to help them with that preparation. High school classes and college classes are not the same thing. Sometimes within an AP context they can be close to it, but they're never exactly the same thing. And so they need someone who's been through that the first time to help them, understand what those college level expectations are. I've basically never seen a student fail because they weren't smart enough to do it. I've seen them fail because they didn't know what they were supposed to do, or they didn't understand the expectations until it was too late. I've seen schedule rigidity, I've seen high schools that, weren't willing to give students the time that they needed to be successful for something like, we have kids in my school right now doing dual credit that are having to do their practicals for their ETT class. Well, they have to go to those practicals. And so if I tell them they can't go because they can't miss history, I'm already making them a failure. And I've seen it. I've never done it. I've seen it. Right? And I've seen a school fail because I've seen students fail, and this is kind of on the students, but you still need to ask the question as the school, because they didn't see these life commitments coming that would impact their ability to be successful. Okay, we're taking we're on the football team and we're going to be gone for 3 weeks, and I'm not going to be able to log on, and I'm in week 11 of the college class, and I should have seen this coming. These schedules were available, and so you kind of got to go through that with the students and make sure they're not painting themselves into a corner where they can't be 2 places at one time. Thoughts on social and emotional learning in trauma-informed schools. Okay? I want to say that while I believe that in the second step curriculum and it's worked for my school, that doesn't mean it's the right one for this school. One of the things you'll see in the goals and the activities that I intend to do in those first before school 60 and 90 days is put together a team to study which one would be the best, and to look at a number of programs, because your school best, what's going to work there, and just because second step worked in Tetland doesn't mean it's going to work here. It should be one of the ones we consider, but I'm not going to be the person that says this has to be it. Okay, I'm going to say I have a certain level of expertise in it, but that's as far as I'm going to go in terms of that. We need to make a group decision because we're all going to have to do it. And then why is it important that we all do it? Because we want that common language and common approach, so that the students find what we're going to do predictable. And because we're predictable and because we are all on the same page with it, they lose that ability to get away with stuff because they're able to say, well, this person does this, and another person, and play one against the other. Oh, she lets me do it. Why don't you let me do it? She gives me this reward. Why don't you give me this reward? No, whatever it is we're doing, we all need to be doing it. And for us all to be doing it, we all need to have buy-in and having chosen how to do it. So, cross-curricular committee in terms of picking what we should be doing. We need to realize that our kids have had traumas in their life. If we're going to do everything we can to make them and address the whole student. 56% nationwide, over half of students have had at least one what are called an adverse child experience. You may have heard it really called an ACE. Okay, I had one. My mother died when I was 6. So before they even get to middle school, 56% and 29% have had at least 2. So if we're really going to address the whole student and try to take approaches with them that make sense and are informed in terms of the trauma that they may have been through, then we need to realize that our students have been hit by these events. Because knowing what to do with a student in crisis takes deliberate practice. Okay? One of the strategies is called the seesaw strategy, which is that as they can become more upset and more excited, your tone, your movements become more flat. Okay? And so it takes advantage of something called mirror neurons, but we don't need to get into that. But the point is that your calmness helps them become more calm. And so as they become more calm, you can come back up to normal. Equity. Okay. First of all, I want to do a very quick definition. I'm sure we all know this, but equity is not equality of opportunity. It is equality of opportunity rather. Okay? It's not equality of outcomes. We can never guarantee everybody's going to have the exact same outcome. What we can do is we can do our very best to make sure everybody has the same opportunity. Okay? Well, why would we worry about equity at Greenwood? Greenwood has a diversity score of 0.06, which I honestly had never seen that low before, but on that later. The reason is because there's more variability within groups than between groups. And what that means is, though, that, obviously, people of Greenwood are not the exact same as people who live in the Greenwood School District are not the same as the students in the Harrisburg School District or the State College School District or any other school district. There's actually way more variability within a group than outside. A black and a white billionaire are actually pretty similar, and a black and a white person who are $15,000 are more like each other than someone who makes $1 billion of either race. So within in that case, Caucasians and African Americans, you're still going to have more differences between whatever way you're grouping people than between the groups themselves, right? So, there are groups that we need to think about in terms of who we're serving and are we serving them as well as we can. As a former foster parent of 17 children, 4 of which I adopted, and eventually a therapeutic foster parent, it's important to me that we're looking at that. There are, at least in 2018, there were 57 foster children in Perry County. There are 24 in Juniata, or at least there were. If you look at one set of numbers I saw, and you did the math, it worked out to about 9 within the school district at any given time. But of course, that can change on a daily basis, and that's probably just an average. We have 23% of our students who are on free and reduced lunch. Are we providing all the services not only that they're entitled to, but that would be helpful for them? We have 11% of our children in special education. Are we providing them the very best education we can? We're not just trying to hit it down the middle and hit the average student. We're trying to make sure every student gets the best. And so one of the things you'll see in the set of activities that I intend to do is doing an equity audit where, maybe we are. Maybe the equity audit comes back and says you guys are addressing all groups as well as you can, but it's a good question to ask. It's a good question to ask. All right, so that is the things that I wanted to show off within it. You have a copy of the goals. I'm going to just hit, a lot of the stuff is exactly what you would think based off of the things I talked about. Becoming fully acquainted with the area, increasing those vocational education numbers. I talked about the audit. And then, one of the things that I could have hit a little better earlier is what I want to do, what's called all of the above communication strategy, which is, well, I want to put out a newsletter. I want to start putting out stuff on Twitter. Continue to do what you're doing on Facebook in the district. By the way, a website, I love what you're doing on the district website where it pops up when you come onto it. Somebody may consider that annoying, but it's making you see it and it's making you get that information. So I would ask you to kind of look through those, because otherwise we'll end up here for an hour and that going through the rest of the goals, and that won't be any fun for anybody. And you do have those to take home with you. I would love to take questions now.